Hi. So I suppose this is me now for the first time. Good. So hi everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Low Code Hour. Hopefully everything works now. My name is Yulia, and I am your usual host with Sam. As you can see, today's setup is slightly different. Um, I have a friend with me. He's gonna need a name and haven't really caught up with the branding. But it's just the two of us today. And we're talking about low code, contributing to open source projects. How does that look like in regards to a low code project? If you can contribute um, in a low code way, or even if you write code for a low code project. On that note, how's everyone's Hacktoberfest going? I can see people in the chat, so hi, Lorna, Lauren, Alex, and Kerrigan. I'm sorry if I butchered that. Oh, facts. Oh, congrats, Alex. Almost done then. Right. I know, Lauren, it's been so fast. I don't know where this October has gone. Right. So, oh, that's great, Lorna. What projects have you contributed to? Yeah, definitely. Meeting people and learning a lot. Yeah, so I'm gonna cut over to my screen, um, in case everyone was wondering. Um, I dressed for the occasion because Hacktoberfest is as much about learning and making mistakes and learning from those mistakes as it is about getting your reward or finding a community where you can fit in and make a real contribution. So today, um, we are going to find an undocumented feature and hopefully fix it. Uh, and for that, we are going to use Node.js because what better to do than poke at one's own project? I'm trying to keep up with the chat box in the meantime. Oh, so Go library going well, Lorna, then? Nice. So, uh, there are different ways we could go about this. I'm not going to tackle contributing to open source in a really Hacktoberfesty way, in the sense that when we're already quite close to the end of Hacktoberfest, I think it's not really just about Hacktoberfest, and it should go way beyond the month of October. While uh, actually, Lorna pointed it out in a really nice way that in a way that the puppy is not just a Christmas gift. Open source and contributing is not only for Hacktoberfest, although it is a perfect time to find the projects to contribute to. So there is a concept of contributing that I like about Node-RED, and that is the flow library. Now, it won't necessarily earn you a t-shirt or a tree reward. But, by the way, yes, should be good. So if you go on node.org, well, flows.node.org, here you can find all the nodes. So these are the packages, recent flows. Now, these are what we would build with the nodes. We'll look at the editor in a sec. It's whole little projects that you can just copy and import it into your editor and run them. So I would consider these as contributions as well. You build something, you put it up there, and then someone can use it and add things to it and then upload it again. It's not really the traditional way of doing the open source thing. You can obviously contribute to the Node-RED library. Well, Node-RED as it is as a project, which I'm pretty sure they have lots of information about. Um, yes, developing the core, and they have contribution guidelines. Probably should zoom in. And you could go this way. The process is quite nicely lined out. You have to go over to their discourse um, and talk about the issue that you would like to fix. And then once that's agreed, you can go ahead and make your contribution. My take on that is that Node-RED is so widely integrated that trying to contribute for the first time to the core might be a little ambitious. Not because you couldn't do it, but so many people are using it that they might be picky about the changes they would accept or they would like to see in there. So an easier way to go about it would be to contribute to a package or develop your own. And these are the nodes, or certain packages have multiple nodes. Again, you can find these in the Flow library, or if you're running Node-RED locally, which we will now. So I know I'm doing low code and I have a terminal up, but please bear with me. I promise it won't take long. Although today we are going to write a little bit of code as well. The completely low code, no code version would be building a flow and contributing it back to the flow library, and the contributing to low code by writing code would be helping out one of these nodes or creating one of your own, on which we actually have a video up on YouTube. Yes, Lorna, that would be correct. Also, I like saying low code because I haven't really seen a no code thing. I mean, people call things no code, but slippery slope. So, hi Ben. Before we get started, is anyone here who hasn't tried Node-RED before or doesn't know what we are talking about right now? Because I kind of made the assumption that it's a Node-RED thing, but I'm happy to go over a little bit of intro. Oh, perfect. So Node-RED is a low-code platform, and I always go to their homepage, and this is what they are calling it: low-code programming for event-driven applications. It tends to change, so always a good reference. Um, it has a runtime and an editor. The editor is browser-based. We're going to look at it in a second. Looks quite similar to this image. So that's the editor, and there's the runtime. And you have these building blocks, if you will, called nodes that you drag and drop into your workspace and then wire them together, thus creating flows, which would be your applications. Yep, well, I think that would be the short version of it. And it's a Node.js application, so whatever runs in Node goes here as well, if you have a package for it. If not, you can write code in it. There are function nodes, or write your own package. Yep, probably that is why it is one of my favorite low-code tools. So let's just go into it. You would use Node to install it on your computer. And I actually did that already. So all I need to do is run the node-red command. In the meantime, if there are any questions, I'm happy to look at them. Not sure if that was a comprehensive intro, possibly not. So happy to go over any other details. So when I run node-red, it will give me a link towards localhost port 1880. And I'm going to open that up in a browser. And welcome to my node-red editor. So this saves every flow I've built before, since it's a new install. I have a flow open from our last time with Sam, where we actually built a node. So this sample node, which in here doesn't really do much besides output the message count times, is now a package in the flow library. So I'm trying to adjust. Yes. The problem with the editor is that the node palette doesn't really get bigger, and I'm on a really big screen, so people might not be too happy about that. But once I'm gonna drag things onto the canvas, which is this central part of the screen, then it will be a bit bigger. On the left-hand side, you have your node palette. This is the building blocks, the nodes that you will drag into your canvas. Let me create a new flow to not confuse things. So you drop things in there and connect them together to build workflows. Once you are done and happy with whatever you've built, you press deploy, which is both a save button and the deploy button. In the right-hand side, you have an info box, which will give you different data about what you have on your flows, those specific nodes. And then you have node help, which was previously the info node, which will come with a little bit of a documentation, if you will. I find this quite helpful whenever I don't know what a certain node does. In the node palette, I just click over, and it doesn't work like that anymore. So that's interesting. They did a release, well, update recently Before that, whenever I clicked on any of these nodes on the left-hand side, documentation would update. It's not the case anymore. Or is that because I have something selected? Oh well. So you can search the help for the node you would like more information on, and then click it, and then the explanation or node help documentation will populate. And the debug area, this is what we're going to look at. Well, this is what I'm always looking at. This is where you figure out what you messed up, but then it's also an event-driven environment. So all your logs will be in here. You possibly want to wire everything up with debug nodes. So these nodes just output the message payload, which is the data that goes in between these nodes. So you can always see in the debug area what is happening in your flow. You can also opt for complete message object, which will output all the data, not just the payload. And yep, also any expression. So that's possibly enough of an intro for Node-RED. Hi, Greg. Zoom in. So I just did that. I'm guessing you are referring to the debug area, which isn't going to be that fun. Because I can't. The only thing I can zoom in on is the workspace. So I mentioned that you could import and export flows. So in this instance, my flow is just injecting the timestamp that is setting off my application flow with a certain value and outputting that value. So it doesn't do much. The value is a timestamp, but I could choose to export this. And I want to export the current flow, and I just copy to clipboard. Now, I could also import this one, because now I have it in clipboard. So if I want to import a flow, I would paste the JSON file in here, because everything exported from Node-RED is a JSON file. It's not generated code as someone would assume. I do get that question more often than expected. And imported. So now I have two flow twos. One that I exported and the one that I imported. And I'll delete those. Now, another thing you can do is manage palette. So this is where things get exciting. You can search for nodes that you already have installed. So for example, default Node-RED nodes would be in here, as I have quite a clean package. Or I could install any nodes I would like. For example, an ngrok node. And I can install it directly in there. It will warn that I should probably read about it before installing it, which I am going to do. And we are back to the flow library. So this is where packages come from. I have the package name, then quick guide on how to use it, how to install it, and I will also have a link to GitHub. This is one node that my colleague Sam did, and I was going to use it for this example, but he fixed it this week, last week. So, Michael, is it possible to export a Node app to JS so you could see what it did? I'll go with a no. So there is a runtime part to Node, but I would go with a no for exporting it as JS. Yes, Lorna. We're using Angular quite often, so Sam thought it would be a nice touch to add it as a node. And he did, and it was taking input as on and off, which was quite nice. But then he figured he would change it to a button, which I was going to do today. But you can add different packages or nodes to your Node-RED instance from here. And then if I scroll down, now I have an ngraph node. Which interestingly doesn't have a button right now, so I am getting confused. Yes, Lorna, that might play out a little differently. So that is one way of installing packages, and that is what you want to do whenever you're trying to build a flow, you're trying to build something using Node-RED. But what we would like to do now is get the source code for a certain package, modify it, and then run it locally. So to do that, we need to first find the package, which we can still do it from the editor, manage palette, and I am looking for Node.js contrib next row, and I am going over to GitHub. All right, so we're forking it. And opening it in a text editor, and we'll be back to this one. But first, we'll have to install the nodes. So it's usually good to open up a new tab. And I'll go find where Node.js is installed on my machine, which is going to be a tricky one. There we go. So we're looking for this folder. Yes, which Node.js? Fortunately, I'm on a new machine, so I only have one. Good. And now we want to install the Node.js contrib nextmo package in here. And that's going to be npm install and figuring out where that package has been cloned. So that will be right. Got there. Well, I'm a low-code developer, so I'll just say that looks good and move on. So now we need to restart Node-RED to see the changes. And that's just stopping the process and typing Node-RED again. And refreshing the page. And now, if I scroll down, I have a Nextmo section to my Node.js palette. And I yet again apologize for how small that is. And I can start using any of these to build workflows. If you are looking to get started on any of it, it's gone tiny again. Yes. Hopefully that's better. We won't spend too much time in here today. So if you'd like to build things using our nodes, there's a bunch of tutorials I've written over the past year that's going to be at blog.nextmo.com. And I believe tag is going to be Node-RED. If someone could correct me on that, that's also great. Hi, type. Right. That was a failed attempt, but anyway, dressed for the occasion. Um, if someone could help me out with a link to Node.js tutorials, that would be amazing. Because that's what we are not going to do today. But we are going to look at the GitHub repo and see what issues are in there. Usually starting with issues is a good call because that's where people want help. So the chance of those getting accepted or getting support is higher. There's one open by me, but oh, yeah. So that's nextmode.com/blog, not the other way around. Thank you, Alex. And since we have Lorna in here, well, we might attempt a support for verified workflows. Might not be able to finish today, but that's not a problem. So verify is one of the Vonage APIs. If we go on the developer portal, there's a lot more info about it. So it is an API that enables you to confirm that you can contact the user at a specific number. So you would use this, for example, when you sign up a user, but you want to make sure that they're a real person, verifying their phone number is a okay option for that, or online shopping and many other options. What has, well, not so recently been added to it is workflows, because normally with Verify you could send SMS as in a code, and then the user would need to provide that code back. You could also escalate this to a phone call or another phone call, and there was a set workflow to it, as in which order would these things go through, as in SMS, voice call, and another voice call. But since verified workflows have been introduced, you can pick one workflow, and these numbers associated with the workflow will determine in which order and what actions will be performed. So let's say if we can add that to the Node-RED code. I'll open up the API reference because that always comes in handy. Right, so if you're here for not code, then I'm probably losing you soon. And in that case, I would like to point out that the other route of contributing, um, which was to build a flow and upload it um, to flows.node.js.org, there are a couple ones um, written by me if you look for Nexmo, because OneH is previously Nexmo, then you can find a couple of those done with R packages. So for example, first one, oh, actually, do we have a verified one? Not yet. So you can copy that, put it in your editor, play around with it. I'm equally happy to see if you would like to add something to it. So it's on GitHub, a request welcome. And now back to the Node.js contrib. Next minute, right. So probably it's a good place to start by finding which part of the code is responsible for verify. For each node that we have in the editor, there is JavaScript and an HTML file. HTML file will determine how it looks. So possibly it's better to go back and forth with the editor open. So these are the verify nodes. Send verify, which will send an SMS with a code. Check code, which will match the code that you input against the one that was sent. There is cancel verify, which will cancel the verification process without escalating it further. There is next verify, which will escalate your verification to the next step. So if you are on SMS, then the next step could be determined by next verify. And there is search verify, which will search for a certain verification based on a request ID. Now, where would I specify workflows? I suppose in the send verification, but since these nodes are all built on code snippets, then I'm expecting it to be in the code snippets, so we'll check that out. And code snippets are send verification with workflow. Now my question is, would that be another node added to a package, or would it be an option added to the send verification node? So let's see a little more about workflows. So yes, workflow 1 is the default that I talked about is SMS and to text to speech. TTS stands for text to speech voice calls. And I've seen that 47. I'm guessing that's a 4. 4 and 7. So 4 is 2 SMS messages. All right. So, okay, Lorna, we're gonna go the 4 way. So when sending a verification code, it, you have to use an API key, API secret, the recipient phone number, and brand name. Yes, it's in a business setup. Now, if we're doing that with a workflow, there is one extra parameter that has to be sent, which is the workflow ID. Yes, good. Thank you, Lauren. While I have you, Lorna, would you add another feature to the node we have, or would you create a separate one which has workflows? I suppose I'm not. Okay, so another feature to the existing one. Right. So let's see how the code looks like for the send verify node that we currently have and how that differs from the code snippet that we have in Node and already implemented and shown on the developer portal. So going back to send verification code with workflows, and I might just try tiling these two up. And this one. I just realized that might not be the best option for people watching. Okay. And we need to have a look at verify.js. Because first we're going to have to fix the functionality and then add in a way for the user to input their workflow choice. We might make it a drop-down, possibly. Right. So Lorna is saying if I don't send a value, it will default to 1, which is quite handy because that's what we have in that node. So perfect. Hopefully we're not breaking anything. If not, contributing to documentation is also a valid way of contributing to open source. So should we create any undocumented features, you are more than welcome to document them. No, please don't quote me on that. Well, you can. We're not breaking anything, hopefully. Although I'm quite talented with glasses and coffee mugs. That's why I have a steel one. Um, Creating features. We're always adding value by creating features. So in case anyone is wondering, this code is pretty much defined by the Node-RED way. So they have a template and then you follow that template. The moment I find the code snippet that equates to what we're trying to do, which is send verify, yes, the send verify function, then we can see what are the parts that are coming from, well, Vonage side of things, and what are the parts that are not. Now, this is an interesting question. Do I need to have the rebranded libraries for workflows to work? Or is this the time when I officially replace everything next to me with Vonage? Good. So we'll rebrand the Node.js package another time, and then everything should work. And I apologize for the differences of having Vonage in one side and Nextway in the other one. I promise they're both the same for now. So we'll go past that. And about the code. So it's Vonage verify request. And we're looking for the same function. It takes number, brand, and workflow ID, but currently we don't have a workflow ID, so we'll need to add one in here. So the to and brand fields are taken from the input field. So let's have a quick look in the HTML. Right. So for the send verify node, there are a couple of things specified in here, like category, the color, um, icon label, and so on. Number and output of input, which is one, and certain input fields. So next to and brand, we are now adding a workflow ID, I suppose. Yes, workflow ID. And then there is the thing that actually defines how the node editor looks like. So if we go back, oh, I suppose this is really, really tiny. But the node properties that we can see in here is what is defined by this bit of code. So that's the maximum credentials label and then the input type. And there is the to, the brand, and here we should add another div for our workflow ID. So for label, the label is what is going to appear up here on the left-hand side. Yes, Lorna. So for every, it's not necessarily for every node because, for example, in verify.js and verify.html, we are covering everything related to the verify API. So for the same node, the JavaScript code and the HTML code has to be in two files that are both named the same, one JavaScript and one HTML, but it doesn't need to be one JavaScript and HTML file for each node. I'm not sure if that makes sense like that. So back to the HTML. Resizing these. Nope, not happening. That's great. So to be fair, sometimes I am not sure how all that building UI works. So that is when I like to go to the Node.js documentation because there is a guide on how to do everything. So you go down to creating nodes as opposed to developing the core, and then you have the JavaScript file and the HTML file. If you are creating a node for the first time, there is quite a nice boilerplate that you can go step by step, create your files, copy and paste the code, run it, and it works. So you can build your first node on this. But now we're trying to figure out how to do the HTML file. So let's see if we can find certain input options. Yes, we already have the nodes defined. Edit dialog. So I would assume yes. So I guess they are calling it the edit dialog. Inputs, perfect. So we could go with the types input, but a drop down would possibly be a better option, as if I remember correctly, there are only 7 options, and we wouldn't want to make it too complicated. So it's always nicer to make sure you can select something that doesn't exist. Workflows. Yes. So there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. 1 being the default. So perfect. Um, then we're looking for a drop-down input. Once I find the documentation, yes. Did I miss the drop-down? Let's see what other options are in there. And if I'm not finding it within the next minute or so, we're gonna go and cheat a little. I'm not going to lie. There are documentations I prefer to this. So it is not happening, and to be fair, I cannot read that fast on stream. So we'll do what I usually do. Find a node that already has the feature that you want and see how it is, then reverse engineer it. So going back to the editor, so which one has a drop down? Create call might have one. Yes. So create call is one of our voice nodes that creates a call in the voice application. But we're not gonna go into it. We're just looking for how to implement a dropdown. So both machine detection and method have what I'm looking for, which is a dropdown with pre-populated values. So we're going back to the code and looking for the create call node and see how that works. So that would be the voice API. So I expect it to be under voice API file. And here it is. That is the JS. So yeah, nothing interesting on the JavaScript side. So it's gonna be the HTML, so the voice API, not the verify. And create call. Great. So default. Okay, it's added in there. So this is one of the drop downs as well, but it's a little more complicated than what we're looking for. That would be the answer URL drop down. So if you look at the left-hand side, that's a drop down as well, but it's also a text field. So we don't want to do that. So going lower and either method or machine detection. Yes. Thank you, Lorna, for answering. Also, there is a what am I doing, I believe. If I did that correctly. Yes. Right. Okay. So that was simpler than expected. Turns out it's a simple text type. So I am going to grab that one and head over to the verify HTML file and replace it with that. Now there is a couple of things that we need to do. For example, change the label. It will still be a node input, but let's call this workflow ID, I suppose. Yes, workflow ID. For class, opening back up the send verify node to see what I'm editing. It's going. I would probably go with the same thing as the other options. I'm not exactly sure at this point what that does, so right. And now defining options. So what does the API send when we're sending the workflows? It's probably the API reference would be a better place to find that. Workflow ID, and it's going to be an integer. Right. So we're going to keep that in mind. So the value will be, let's just clear this out and then duplicate it a couple of times. And that should be 7 if everything is right. And let's add the name for them. So that's going to be SMS, text to speech, text to speech. I'm just grabbing the values from the documentation. So how do people feel about this format where we're doing new things in a new format with less people? Right. So now that should have made a change in how it looks like. I did forget in the meantime whether I should restart it or just refresh it. We do need to deploy that, otherwise those nodes are going to disappear. It's going to warn me because none of these nodes are set up with credentials and all those kind of things. But that's not an issue. right now. Yeah, I might need to reinstall that. And reinstalling the package. And restarting Node-RED. Now that I think about that, I possibly could have gotten away with only restarting Node-RED. And now we have a drop-down field. I'm not sure if I could zoom into it so that people can actually see what's happening in there. We really need to sort this out. If I'm ever contributing to the core, this is gonna be it, so that you can zoom in. So we have another input field, workflow ID, and it is a drop-down. On a second thought, we might want to add numbers in there, but yep, so far it's good, and it doesn't do anything for now. But now we can go back to the JavaScript file and see about the functionality. I'm quickly adding the numbers in here because if it's confusing for me, it will be confusing for someone else as well. Why do the job twice? Good. So just to recap, it has workflow ID, node input workflow ID. And I believe we should be done with the HTML in there. These are the different bits that also go into the node, like the node help that appears on the right-hand side if I go there. So that bit of information is that bit of code. But moving on to the JavaScript, because now we want to make this actually work. So once I click on one of the options, I want that to go through to the JavaScript side and register that I did indeed pick that option. So back to verify.js. I'm also going back to the voice API JS because that's where I looked at machine detection, which works in a similar way. So let's see if there is anything more special about it. Nope, coming back. So just adding in the variables. So we have the to, the brand, and now the next thing is to add in the workflow ID. We also have to add that workflow ID to the request so that when Nextmo or OneInch actually makes the request, well, we make the request to verify, then the workflow ID is included. So let's stay consistent with the naming. So I'll add the underscore in here as well. And I'm pretty sure that collects it from the input field where I had workflow ID without the underscore. I was so sure there's more than that to it, so we'll see. Right, so let's see what we've done. So restarting Node-RED, and let's see the editor, which I always lose. Okay, changes seem to have been applied. For a minute, I'm going to get rid of the other nodes. And we're going to test this one. I'm going to put an inject node in front of it, just because it has to be set off. Normally, I would possibly wire up verify to a user interface. It's a nicer way to collect user input. But at this time, I really just want that impulse to start the workflow, and an inject node is perfect for that. By default, it sends the timestamp. I really don't care what it sends right now, so that will be fine. I just need that button to set it all off. And let's see what this verify need to work. It needs Nextmo credentials. So that means I will need to put in my API key and API secret, which I did not do, but will. I will need a phone number that it sends the verification to, so that be SMS, text-to-speech call, or a combination of the two. A brand, this is to identify myself so that the person receiving the call or message knows what the verification is for. And I will pick a workflow ID. So first things first, let me add my API key and secret. So I'll be back in just a second while I put up my secrets page. Actually, let me show you where you can find those. So you're going to go to dashboard.maxmo.com and log into your Vonage account, which, yes, I am aware how that sounds. But in your dashboard, the first thing you will see is your API key and your API secret are located here in the middle. So you can use that copy icon to copy to clipboard and move back to Node-RED and paste it in. And you will do the same thing for your secret. Just copy to clipboard. I will hide my screen. Back into Node-RED, paste in your secret, and click update or done or save. In my case, it was update because I already clicked save with empty details. And it will save it as a configuration node in Node-RED, which will have an ID to it. Now let's use a phone number in there. This will be in international format, so you will not use plus or double O in the front. But other than that, it will be an international format, and our brand is going to be, well, let's see, low code hour. And for workflow, let's set one that is not a default. So for example, let's select the third one, text-to-speech. Actually, let's go with 7 because that's only one call. And I will also follow up with the debug node so that I can see what is going on in my workflow. And I will select complete message object just in case there is anything else. I like to cover all properties that are attached, not just the message.payload. Because as you can see in the timestamp, message.payload will be the main information we are trying to send through the workflow, but there might be other properties as well. I can add at any point a property at message level, not necessarily attach it to message.payload, and then the only way I could see it in the debug area is if I am debugging the whole message object as opposed to message.payload. So that's just a safety net I like to use. There's not much more than that to it. And let's see how it works. All right, so something is happening. Oh, and it works. That would be a call.
Please enter your low-code hour activation code. 4353. I repeat. 4353. Valid the next 5 minutes.
So, in case that didn't go through, that was 4353. Let me put that somewhere. And yes, so However surprised I was, that did work. Now, that is our request ID. I am not exactly sure what happens now if I don't confirm that, because with the normal setup, it would have come through as an SMS, then as a voice call, and another voice call, and at some point it gets annoying. Well, that's the purpose of the API, so well, to get through, not to get annoying. And I am just quickly going to use a cancel verify request so that um, we make sure it's stopping and also not using my credit, which seems to be running low. Um, this time I don't have to put in my API key and secret again because it's the same API. It uses the same kind of authentication. Vonage APIs usually use two kinds. One is the Nexmo Basic, which is API key and secret. The other kind is when a voice application gets involved. Um, that requires a little bit more details. But here we have the same kind of authentication, same API, and my credentials have already been saved under config nodes, which can be viewed in here. Uh, while I'm editing, it's not exactly working. So um, currently I only have one kind of configuration node, but it's in there. It has that ID, so you can find it after that. And when I am trying to set up my cancel verify node, verification node, I can just select that ID, and that will apply all my credentials in there without me having to do it again. And the request ID, now I'm going to paste it in. Oops. Now that was not. So this one. What I could do is copy and paste it in, but if we're here, then I'm quickly going to show you another thing that I usually do. I use a change node because in Node-RED we have three kinds of context. One is the message context, which is whatever is connected, knows of the message object and its properties. There is the flow context, which would be anything on the same flow or same tab, if you will. As you can see, I have flow 1, 2, and 3 open. So if I set something as a flow variable, then I will be able to access it from anywhere on this tab, uh, not on the other ones. And there is global, which works across the tabs. So when I send the verification, I would like to save this request ID as a flow variable so that I can access it in the cancel verification node without having to grab the request ID every single time over. So how do I do that? It's a change node, and I am setting the value of this tends to get confusing, so bear with me until we try it. But I believe that we are setting the value of flow dot request ID to message, and then we can see where that request ID is within the message object. So that would be message dot payload dot request ID. I already have the message in there, so all I need to do is add payload that request ID. And I'm going to add a debug node in there just in case to see what's happening. And now, yes, that won't do much because it's going to, no, it's setting it. And would be debugging the message object, which this is not because it's the flow object. So we can put it down here. What we can do now is use the value of the request ID by referring it with mustache templating, that is two curly brackets, and then the variable name, that's, well, label that you would like to use. So this is flow.requestID. And now this is what I'm connecting to a debug node. Again, whole message object. Um, Actually, that's just a personal preference, because if you look at the other one, there was absolutely nothing besides the payload. Um, I think it's just a good habit to have. So deploy. I just realized that since we already did the first path, yes, a part of a flow that is not connected to another part of the flow is called a path. So I have two paths on my screen. First one, and then whatever is not selected is the second path. In the first path, we already pressed the timestamps button, well, inject nodes button, since Node-RED is an event-driven environment that already has gone through. So although I have the request ID in the debug area, and I can copy and paste it over into the cancel verify node to cancel the verification, if I press the first one again, that's going to start yet another verification, if it can. Although I'm pretty sure that verifications only can start again once the previous one is finished, so that would be an error. So let me first put the request ID in there, cancel the verification, does not exist or is no longer active. So I possibly took more than 5 minutes in there and it expired. So back to having it as a variable. Status null, that means that it is successful, so it should be calling soon. Right, and you cannot cancel a verification within the first 30 seconds of it, so we'll just have to wait for it. And I could also use search verify to see what is happening with my verification. And I will use the flow that's request ID. I do realize today's topic is not necessarily exploring the verify API, but we should make sure that things are working before we are contributing it back to the initial project. Although it won't be extensive testing today, because we don't really have time for that, but will still make something right. So search verify searches for the verification. Yes, and the status is in progress. So I'm not exactly sure why is that not coming through, because our workflow selection worked. Actually, let's see if there's anything in the terminal. Nope, everything seems just fine. But now I could cancel it. Status 0 is all good in nextmove/1h terms. So now it's cancelled. What I quickly want to do is see if other workflow options work as well. I'll also add another debug in here. This time I'm interested in message.payload. So it should export the workflow ID. I'm not sure if we added it to it. So it gets the credentials. We're looking for send verify, yes. Gets credentials, makes the request, message that payload will be the response, and the message object will be sent back. So we should be looking in the API reference to see what is coming back. Response, yes. So we're getting a request ID and a status. And that means we should be grabbing the workflow ID before that. No, that might be interesting. If it's being set within the node, I am not exactly sure how we could grab that. Let's just see if this is a long shot, and possibly an incorrect one. But let's see what happens if I start another verification. Yes, that is undefined. And I started it with the 7 again. So we'll be waiting 30 seconds for that to close it. Because what I cannot do is send another verification to the same number. Yes, concurrent verifications to the same number are not allowed. So that means I will either have to complete the verification or cancel it. So hopefully enough time went by run code 3 times, it will stop. Yes. So check code. This is how we can send back the code. Credentials request ID will be referring to it as flow. Yes, we will not be referring to it as flow as request ID because we have already started it, so it will not pick up on it. So copy paste it is, and the code will be, well, since it's a 4-digit code, I'm pretty sure 12 will not be the correct one. That might actually go into a filter of some sorts, but we'll see. And then a debug node again. At this point, it could have been the other one. Right. So 30 seconds went by. This one will be cancelled. And then for some reason, I remember Node.js having issues with mode mustache templating and dashes. So it might be an issue with underscore as well. Right, cancel. We have successfully canceled that one. And now let's try Lorna's favorite workflow, hopefully. Yes, I keep getting the undefined because, oh, and no, let me see how I can show that to you. Hopefully, yeah. It's probably made to focus on my face, so I don't think the screen is gonna work. Yeah, so I did get the message, which again says valid for 5 minutes. So if I don't reply to this, I am going to get a second message. I'm not exactly sure how long after this, um, but I'm sure it says in the documentation, yes. So default wait will be 120 seconds. I can also escalate it to the next verification, but at the rate I'm moving, I probably won't be necessary. Yeah, so check code. We are sending back the wrong code, which will possibly complain. Yes, code provided does not match, which we will do twice more. And then if we search said verification, it will say that it is no longer a valid verification. Or failed. Yes, it did fail because we provided the wrong code 3 times over again. Now, if you're contributing to open source or anything else or any project, I really do urge you to not do testing as I am doing in here. But hey, we tried 2 out of 7 options and both of them worked. So let's see how we are going to contribute this back to the initial project. So for this occasion, I am actually, let's just make these not styled. I don't know why I tried that today. Wasn't the best option. Oh, hi Martin and Lauren and Luke. Hi. And hi Noreen and everyone. Perfect timing because we are good and mostly finished. And 2 out of 7 options are working, so we'll call that thorough testing and contribute it back to GitHub. So I am using the desktop version for this. let me see if I can zoom in so that you people can see what I'm doing. Right. So just another quick look at what we've added. Um, we were looking to upgrade the send verify node with an option to provide workflow ID. And for that, we had to modify the JavaScript and HTML file that defines the behavior and the look of this node. So in the HTML side, we added um, another input field with a drop down and the corresponding options. And then in the JavaScript file, we added in the corresponding variable and made sure that it is also included in the request, well, this one, when it's getting sent to the verify API. So now I am writing up my summary. Slightly nervous about this because I'm gonna hear about it from Lorna. um, about writing meaningful summaries and descriptions and using Git in the right way, which I thank you for, by the way. So, when writing a summary, we ask ourselves, what will this merging this do? So, if someone was to merge this, then it would um, add um, the, well, add workflow ID as input. Yes, that is a really nice mixed title case and sentence case. I don't even know what to. And we possibly want to also say which node. That would be the send verify. And description, adding a drop down. So that's about as much sense as I'm going to make. And we are not committing to master, although we do have push access. So we are creating a new branch, which is going to be add verify workflows. We are creating the branch and bringing all the changes over, switching the branch. Yes. And now we are going to commit that. Possibly should have published the branch before. Right. Uh, so bear with me while I log into GitHub with my company SSO. So how is everyone doing? yes, that was amazing. We are getting there. 2 more steps and I'm back. Right. So back where we were before, now I managed to publish my branch since I logged into GitHub. And I, why am I not able to do that? So something interesting just happened. Okay, so it did commit. All right. And I can no longer create a pull request with that, so yeah. So if anyone has any tips why I cannot do anything with that, it would be great to know. Let's see what's on GitHub. Yeah, that was not. So I did publish my branch. Okay, let's try fixing it. No, I am blocked with the GitHub desktop version, so we'll just do it from the browser. Yes, new pull request. Oh, I am doing something really wrong in here. Yes, so that should be master. I'm not sure why. Hmm. So that was interesting. Now that you say Lorna, I might have pushed it in the wrong way, but so it's under other. Yes. Anyway, we are trying to merge it into master, and our repository is that one. Good. And that's the description we've provided. And also a nice thing I like to do is add that it fixes a certain issue if it does. So this is issue number 47. So I can say it fixes 47, and hopefully GitHub will pick up on that. That's right. Right. And now I will ask for a review as well, um, which is not mandatory, but maybe another time. All right, so we have today looked at Node-RED, running it locally, how we can add certain nodes and packages. So go down and look if the diff looks okay. It did. So that's what we did to the HTML file, which all looks good. And that's what we did to the JavaScript file. So I do think that is what was expected to happen. And yes, so now if I come back to the issues, you can see that there is a pull request linked to it. So it signals that someone tried to fix it. And we'll see. The jury's still out if it's fixed or not. In a similar way that these two were fixed by pull requests. So yeah, sorry, Lorna, I'm a little slow with reading messages, getting confused between the three screens, and really not that fast with reading. So I think that's a wrap for today. Thank you all for joining me. Hopefully that was somewhat interesting. Today we looked at running Node-RED locally, downloading a package and modifying it in a way that is meaningful. I always find that contributing to open source, to be fair, I'm quite new at that. I'm not exactly what you would call an experienced open source contributor. Uh, and I do thank my colleagues for encouraging me to helping it out with it. Um, and the really good tip that I also received was to start with something that I'm actually using, hence Node-RED, um, and find a package that, well, you could also go out and find a package you've never touched, a project that you've never interacted with, and there is still valuable learning and collaboration involved in that. Uh, but it might be easier to find something that you already use, you wish it had a feature it doesn't, and then have a step at maybe adding that feature or working towards adding that feature if it's a bigger change. Um, but I think adding this workflow input to verify was quite a nice example for how you can contribute without it taking a whole lot of time and to a project that you actually use, and then giving it back, offering it back for other people to also use it, And I think for me, this is what Hacktoberfest is about, and also contributing to open source. So I am hoping to do more about that. I know it doesn't exactly qualify as contributing to open source when it's our own project, but oh hey, it will work for today, just the way testing worked. Please don't do that ever. Like, if you're going to contribute it back, please test it before. Anyway, thank you all for joining me today. And yes, we do have daily Hacktoberfest streams running, so make sure to check those out. Also, there is in the chat box link to all sources, resources Hacktoberfest related. There are blog posts, links, talks, videos, guides. Really, you should check these out. And stay tuned in here daily or even more than once a day for Hacktoberfest streams. Also, I'm gonna be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. UK time, so that makes it 2 hours later than today. And we're doing Hacktoberfest then. So thank you all. Have a good rest of your day and see you next time. Bye.